My wife said, "My cousin and her kids are taking the guest house. Stop acting like a landlord," I replied. "Then you can explain that to my attorney." She thought I was bluffing until I changed the gate code, canceled the utility transfer, and met her cousin in the driveway with a printed hotel reservation and a copy of the property deed. Original post. I'm Marcus, 32. I run operations for a commercial landscaping company outside Phoenix, which is a dry way of saying I spend all day dealing with schedules, equipment, access, insurance, and people who think temporary means I'll fix it later if anyone notices. That matters here. My wife, Elise, is 30. We'd been together 5 years, married for just over 2. The property was mine before the marriage. Main house up front, detached guest house in back, not some giant estate. Just a decent lot I bought after 3 brutal years of 70-hour weeks and saying no to literally everything that wasn't a mortgage payment. When Elise moved in, I tried hard not to make it feel like my place. She redid the kitchen stools, picked the bedroom curtains, turned half the garage into a holiday decoration warehouse, all of it. The only thing I kept structured was the guest house. That building was not overflow space. It was functional. I used it as an office during busy season, equipment storage during storms, and sometimes as a crash spot when I had crews starting before 5 a.m. It had its own mini-split, tiny kitchenette, bathroom, and separate meter. Not luxurious, but private, useful, and very much not available for random family emergencies. Elise's cousin Talia is 29 and has 2 kids, ages 7 and 9. Every story about Talia starts with something unfair happening to her and ends with someone else paying for it. Bad ex, mean landlord, toxic boss, judgmental neighbor. If life were a courtroom, Talia would have spent years testifying without ever once being cross-examined. I'm not saying bad things never happened to her. I'm saying she had a supernatural ability to turn every crisis into somebody else's housing problem. The warnings were small at first. Elise started saying things like, "Talia's just trying to get stable," and "the kids need consistency," which are both phrases people use when they're trying to smuggle a permanent commitment inside temporary language. Then it became more specific. Could Talia maybe use the guest house for a week? Would it really be that big a deal if the kids stayed over a few nights? Why are you so protective of a building nobody lives in? Nobody lives in it because I never said they could. That Thursday I got home around 6:30 and saw 2 pink backpacks hanging on the guest house doorknob. That got my attention. Then I saw a stack of children's plastic drawers sitting just inside the open door, then a bag of cereal on the kitchenette counter. Then Elise standing in the doorway of the guest house holding a fitted sheet like she was on an HGTV budget special. I asked, "Why are there kids' things in my guest house?" She didn't look guilty. That was the first bad sign. She looked inconvenienced that I was asking. She said, "Talia and the kids are taking the guest house for a while. Stop acting like a landlord." There's a particular kind of silence that comes right before you realize a conversation has already happened without you. That was the silence. I said, "How long is a while?" She waved the sheet once. "Until she gets back on her feet." Which, translated from family emergency dialect, means indefinitely. I asked, "When were you planning to tell me?" She said, "Marcus, don't do this." That phrase, "don't do this," always interesting because this usually means notice what I already decided. I stepped inside the guest house and saw more than backpacks, a laundry basket. A pack-and-play folded against the wall, 3 grocery bags, 2 kid-sized water bottles in the sink, Talia's coat on the chair. So this wasn't an idea, this was a move-in. I turned back to Elise and said, "Did you tell her she could move in before asking me?" She crossed her arms. "Why do you always frame basic compassion like some legal issue?" "Because unauthorized occupancy becomes a legal issue amazingly fast." I said, "Because it's my property." She rolled her eyes. "Our property." Important distinction there. The house had become marital residence in every emotional sense, sure, but title, mortgage, insurance, property taxes, utility accounts, guest house permit work, all me, all pre-marriage, all documented. I said, "You don't assign housing on property you don't own." That's when she said the line that ended the marriage. "My cousin and her kids are taking the guest house. Stop acting like a landlord." Not asking, not discussing, announcing. I nodded once and pulled out my phone. She laughed. Actually laughed. Thought I was doing one of those dramatic husband gestures people later apologize for over takeout. Instead, I called my property attorney's office. He wasn't available, but his assistant knows me because I used them once during an easement dispute with a neighbor. I said I needed a same-day call back about unauthorized move and exposure on a detached structure. Elise's face changed a little at that. Then I called the utility company and canceled the transfer request someone had made for the guest house electric submeter effective Saturday. That got a bigger reaction. She said, "Are you seriously doing this?" I said, "Yes." Then I walked to the gate keypad and changed the rear access code. Then I disabled the guest house smart lock from the app and set it to manual unlock only from inside. Then I booked a 2-night hotel under Talia's name because I was not going to let 2 kids sit in my driveway because the adults around them confused entitlement with generosity. Elise followed me the entire time, shifting from anger to disbelief to that icy whisper people use when they want to sound calm and superior at once. She said, "You are humiliating my family." I replied, "No, you humiliated them when you promised them housing that wasn't yours to offer." Talia showed up the next morning at 912 in a silver crossover packed like she was fleeing a flood. Kids in the back, trash bags of clothes, microwave, desk fan. Box labeled winter. I was already outside. I met her halfway down the driveway with a folder in one hand and the hotel reservation in the other. She smiled at first, like she was expecting welcome energy. Then she saw Elise behind me, tight-jawed and not speaking. I handed Talia the reservation and said, "There's been a misunderstanding." Elise spoke out of turn. "You're not moving into the guest house." Talia blinked, then looked at Elise, then back at me. "What?" I said it again, slower. She started with, "But Elise said," and I cut in, very calm. Elise was not authorized to offer it. That word hit hard. Authorized. People really hate formal language when they've been freelancing with your boundaries. Talia's expression shifted fast from confusion to offense. The kids were still in the car watching us through the glass, which made the whole thing worse and also exactly why I kept my voice measured. I said, "The hotel is paid for through Sunday. After that, you'll need another plan." Talia asked if I was seriously turning kids away. That accusation always arrives on schedule, usually from the adult who created the situation. I said, "I'm preventing a bad plan from becoming my legal problem." She took the reservation but made sure to do it like it was contaminated. Elise looked at me like I had set money on fire. Maybe I had. Still cheaper than letting this stand. She packed a suitcase that afternoon and left with Talia, told me she was going to her sister's to cool off. I told her to take whatever she needed for the week. That night the property felt strange, not empty, recovered. Update 1 2 days later, the family chorus started. First text was from her aunt, then her brother, then a cousin whose number I didn't even have saved. Same basic theme every time. You put children in a hotel, you chose a building over family. Real men protect women and kids. That last one made me laugh a little because nobody had protected me from becoming default housing inventory. I replied exactly once to one person. I sent a screenshot of Elise's text from the week before. "Talia can use the guest house. I already told her it's handled. Don't make me beg you to act human." Then I stopped engaging. The surprise came from Talia's ex-landlord, not directly. Through Elise's brother, Aaron. Aaron called Tuesday night and said, "I'm not defending how you handled it, but you're not crazy. Talia got evicted because she moved her boyfriend in against the lease and then stopped paying on time." That was useful. Apparently the story circulating was that some evil landlord tripled her rent and threw her out with no warning. Reality, as usual, had paperwork. Wednesday afternoon my attorney called back. We walked through the facts: premarital ownership, detached permitted structure. No lease, no written approval from me, potential liability exposure if occupancy started, potential tenant rights mess if they established residence. His advice was beautifully simple: do not let them move a toothbrush in. Communicate in writing. Do not compromise into ambiguity. So I sent Elise one email: the guest house is not available to Talia or anyone else. This is not temporary housing, now or later. Please coordinate a time to retrieve the items you moved there without my consent. She answered with 5 paragraphs about compassion, trauma, female safety, and how I was proving her mother right about men who use money to control space. That was interesting because it meant her mother had apparently been workshopping my character before I ever said no. Friday, I boxed up everything Elise had moved into the guest house. The kids' backpacks, the plastic drawers, the cereal, the bedding, 2 grocery bags, a stuffed dinosaur. I labeled it all. Neat, dry, not mean. Talia picked it up from the driveway while glaring like I had personally invented instability. At work, meanwhile, I had an irrigation fleet audit, 2 vendor meetings, and a 6 a.m. storm prep call with one of our golf course clients. Actual tasks, actual deadlines, useful things. It helped keep the self-pity out. At night, I started noticing how much quieter the property felt when nobody was trying to turn my boundaries into a moral failing. Update 2: about 3 weeks later, Elise stopped trying to win me back and switched to reputation management. The vague social posts started first. Some men think ownership is love. Some women learn too late that provider means gatekeeper. A buddy from work sent me screenshots and asked, "Is this about you?" I sent him the hotel reservation, the email to Elise, and the property tax record with only my name on it. He replied, "Yeah, that's not how she's telling it." Of course it wasn't. Then Talia got creative. She filed a forwarding request using my property address for some of her mail. I found out because 2 envelopes with her name landed in my box. Then a school flyer. Then a clinic statement. That was a problem. Because mail is how temporary nonsense starts dressing up like residency. Attorney handled that one fast. Certified notice to Talia. Return to sender documentation. A paper trail saying no one by that name resided on the property and no mail acceptance was authorized. Again, people call you cold when paperwork ruins their improvisation. Then came the driveway scene. Elise showed up unannounced one Saturday around noon in sunglasses, and that quiet voice she uses when she thinks she's being the reasonable one. She said, "Can we just reset?" I said, "Depends what reset means." She said, "It means you apologize to Talia, we let her stay in the guest house for 60 days, and we move forward." I actually looked away for a second after that, not dramatically. I just needed to stare at the back fence and fully absorb the fact that she had learned absolutely nothing. I said, "You're asking me to apologize for stopping an unauthorized move into my property." She answered, "You're asking me to choose between you and my family." I said, "No, you already chose, I'm just refusing to subsidize it." That landed, not because she agreed, because she knew it was true. Then she cried, which was new, told me I was ending a marriage over one bad call. I said, "One bad call is ordering the wrong tile. This was a planned occupancy decision made behind my back." She left after that, but not before saying, "You'll regret being this rigid." Maybe. Still less than I'd regret being spineless. That same week I got promoted to regional operations manager, better base salary, truck allowance, bigger team. I signed the offer letter the same afternoon my attorney mailed the certified notice over Talia's mail stunt. Timing has a mean little sense of humor. Final update: the divorce moved faster than I expected. No kids, no jointly titled real estate, no shared business, just cleanup. Elise pushed for partial reimbursement tied to improvements she claimed she made to the property. New stools, paint, some decor. Her attorney floated a number that almost made me admire the confidence. My attorney responded with receipts. Most of the major property costs were mine, predating the marriage. The guest house improvements were all premarital. The utility accounts were mine, the mortgage was mine, the insurance was mine, the landscaping upgrades were mine. In the end, she got her personal property, half of the joint checking balance, and a modest cash settlement that cost me less than 6 more months of litigation would have. Cheap, comparatively. Talia never did get housed by anybody in the family for more than a few weeks at a time, which tells you everything I needed confirmed. Last I heard, she was living with a boyfriend outside Mesa and already fighting with the apartment manager over visitor rules and noise complaints. Some patterns don't need my commentary. Aaron texted me after the decree came through. You were right about the guest house. That was enough. The best part is that the place feels like mine again. I turned the guest house into a proper office and equipment planning space. Repainted the inside a clean sandstone color. Put the key cabinet back on the wall. Added a steel shelf for bid folders. Reset the thermostat to something chosen by the guy who pays the power bill. Small joys, very real. A couple people asked me later whether a marriage should really end over a guest house. No. But it can absolutely end over entitlement, over promises made with property that isn't yours, over volunteering someone else's resources, then calling them cruel when they notice. Over the assumption that if the word family is used with enough emotional force, your boundaries are supposed to dissolve on contact. That was the real issue, not Talia, not the kids, not the hotel, not even the building itself. The issue was that Elise didn't think my no mattered once she'd already handed out her yes. That doesn't improve with time, it gets worse. She thought I'd cave because the optics were ugly. I didn't, and that was the whole point.